my dears, in love and light. Ways your consciousness ascends after spiritual awakening. Now, spiritual awakening occurs, and I know that many of you, if not all of you, have experienced this. And our consciousness goes into rapid ascension. Where we were sleeping before, all of a sudden we're awakened and so many things change. Our ideas about reality change, our ideas about self changes, and our ego is stripped bare. But our consciousness is given a sudden upgrade. It's a bit like a kundalini awakening. That's the energetic physical manifestation of it. But for many of us, we have a spiritual awakening and the consciousness suddenly ascends like a whole bunch all at once, and that's why it can be so traumatic. When this occurs to each of us, the sudden ascension causes a whole range of different ways of thinking, different ways of perceiving reality and self. So I'm going to tell you about different ways that our consciousness ascends after spiritual awakening, and let me know in the comments if you relate to any of these. So number one, for ways that our consciousness ascends during a spiritual awakening is the ability to see the bigger picture. Our creative mind really does come online with the spiritual awakening. And instead of being wrapped up in the minutiae of life, being swept up in thought and brainwashed by everything that's gone on and the system we're in, we gain the ability to see the bigger picture rather than being stuck in one tiny part of it. Number two, for ways our consciousness ascends during a spiritual awakening is that sometimes things seem to be going in slow motion. It's like we're watching the world go by as if it's in slow motion. We see things unfolding as if it's very predictable. We watch people talking even in slow motion, as if we're tapping into the matrix, as if we're seeing through the illusion. Number three, for ways our consciousness ascends and gets an upgrade during a spiritual awakening is we get a compassion boost. Many of us before a spiritual awakening perhaps were not so compassionate. I certainly have several people who have said this. They maybe thought themselves more important when they were pursuing a materialistic lifestyle, seeing how much you could get and be better than everyone else. They had less compassion for others. Perhaps eating animals, you realise that that's not a compassionate thing to do. You might be on that path and getting to that point, who knows. But you see poverty and things going on in the world and see how inequality is rife on this planet, and it starts to really hurt. You start to realise that's not how it's supposed to be, at least where you came from anyway. Number four, ways that your consciousness ascends during a spiritual awakening is the realisation of the oneness of all things. Now, I have numerous people say this to me, that when they've had a spiritual awakening, suddenly they realise that everything is one, that we are one. Reality, us, everything in it, it's all one, like a vast, infinite, energetic soup of information, and we're all connected, and we're all part of one being experiencing itself, divided into small portions, going around interacting with each other, interacting with itself. So when you look on another person, know that you're looking on yourself, and giving love to another person is giving love to yourself, and it will be shone back on you 100-fold. And giving love to everyone and everything, and walking around in that disposition of love, of continuous love and appreciation and understanding and forgiveness of all things, then it's you're reflecting this on yourself, and this is what your reality will become. So very important realisation there. A realisation during ascension is that everything is one, we're all connected, and so we all need to move forward together as one. Number five, in ways that our consciousness ascends during a spiritual awakening, is that we have a sudden thirst for information, for wisdom. Now the indigo chakra, that of wisdom, is really opening and flourishing at this point, and this gives us a thirst for wisdom and information. Thus we're not content with this third density reality, because we know there's more than this, and that this is a great place to be for learning and experience and for having our catalyst, but there's more truth, there's more beyond that, and some of us want to find out the truth. We instinctively search and seek for the truth, and we can't help it. It's like we become a bit obsessed with it sometimes, so you may relate to that, but the underlying notion is a seeking of the truth and a hunger for wisdom. And number 6, ways that our consciousness ascends during a spiritual awakening, is that the mundane can seem impossible to tolerate. Our consciousness suddenly ascends, we get an upgrade, and we realise that the 9 to 5 can't hold our consciousness. I'm not saying that we become a bunch of layabouts, but many people, I find, completely the opposite. They want a new purpose, one that's full of meaning. I myself was in marketing and media, and I was not content because I felt like, yes, I was earning lots of profit for my boss so he can have an amazing Mercedes. But what good am I doing in this role? How am I contributing to the benefit of humanity or the benefit of the planet? So I felt stuck in this 9 to 5, often more like 9 to 7 job, and my consciousness felt trapped. Many people say this, their consciousness wants to be set free, to be able to explore and do and help others and do all sorts of things that we're meant to do. And yet this system is built in such a way that it contains consciousness. But we intuitively feel that that's not right. So number 7, ways that consciousness ascends during a spiritual awakening, is that some of us realise that we're finding our way back. That this lifetime we've had the veil of forgetting pulled over us, and it's our journey to find our way back to love, back to the truth. We realise we're an infinite being, and that's one step in the process of helping to dissolve the ego. Now it's okay to have one, because you're a human being after all. You'll still have likes and preferences and be you, an individual who's different to others. That's all ego. But we're dissolving, say, the negative parts of it, or the materialistic parts of it, or the extremely self-serving parts of it, in order to make our way back to source, in order to return to love, in order to return to the truth. So that brings me on to number 8, on how your consciousness ascends during a spiritual awakening. We realise that our human self is a temporary self in this lifetime, one to be appreciated, of course, and therefore the ego, as I touched on a moment ago, needs to be re-evaluated. So we may not like the ego that we have become, the one that partially has been given to us, well, to a great extent given to us. As we've grown up, we've been given lots of ideas, values and beliefs that we've taken on board, because young people are like sponges and they suck it all up and then question it later sometimes. So now we're re-evaluating that ego we have, and we can pick and choose who we want to be now, what parts of self we want to keep and what parts we want to change, and that allows us to grow and move forwards towards the light, if you will. So it's all about ego work now, because we realise it's a superficial construct now, and that it's malleable and we can change it and shape it as we choose. So again, this neatly leads me on to number 9, ways that your consciousness ascends during and after a spiritual awakening, is that we recognise that we've been subject to all these limiting beliefs. Lots of beliefs that have been given to us, like that we grow older and age, that happiness is found in success and materialism, that some of us are better than others, that we must work a 9 to 5, that we are way more important than animals, and lots of things like that. So when you suddenly step outside of the dream that you've been in while you've been sleeping, and you look around, you realise that you're so limited by lots of limiting beliefs, and you can choose to change these limiting beliefs that you have about self and about reality in order to liberate yourself from those chains, if you will. Number 10, ways that our consciousness ascends during a spiritual awakening is that you see reality as an illusion, as it were. We realise that quantum physics tells us that we are living in an information-based reality that only really takes form when someone's observing it, and that it all goes on in here, just like when we're dreaming. Everything goes on in here, but we believe it's real. And just in real life, everything goes on in here as if it's real. And everything we perceive, it's all just light goes in here and electrical signals go into the brain and they're interpreted. So our whole reality is simply a picture made up and created within the brain. It's pieced together within the brain, creating this reality. It's light and then electrical signals into the brain. It's dark in the brain. I'm talking about sight only, but it's the same with all senses. It's all electrical signals, and then it's pieced together into this picture of reality around us. How do we know that picture of reality is correct? It's just amazing. Anyway, so we see this reality as perhaps an illusion for our ascension. It's like a classroom, if you will, for our learning and experience, and in that way we have a different attitude to life. Instead of being swept up in it, we take advantage of the lessons life brings and pay attention to synchronicities, because we know they're signposts from creation, spirit guides, higher self, or whatever, that we are being given learning and experience or the way forward. And we pay attention to the law of attraction because it's just a rule in this reality. So we see life as an illusion created for our learning and experience, for our catalyst. And lastly, number 11, ways that our consciousness ascends during a spiritual awakening is that we see things and events and circumstances for what they really are. For example, if someone's having a go at me, I don't get, again, swept up in that, bothered by it, not bothered. The reason is because that person's having their own experience. They're unable to take a non-reactive stance and deal with things logically because of their own past experience. So I have compassion for them and I want to help them. People do what they do because they're pretty much the sum of their past experiences, and they react how they do because they perceive me wrongly. You have empathy for the other person and understanding, and you can have total forgiveness in that way for someone behaving negatively towards you, because you understand from their perspective they're upset and they have their own reasons. So I see that for what it is. If I have an accident or I lose something, I see it for what it is. It's just meant to happen. It's just a bother. It's just a challenge. And that moves me on to problems. Problems are not problems. They're challenges. Everything is a challenge. Because a problem implies something that needs to be solved in order to feel better, but a challenge is something that you complete and achieve and feel like you've done something well done and learned something. So no more problems, only challenges. Instead of taking on the limiting perception, say, that you're being brainwashed with through media, you see it for what it really is. A bunch of people's perceptions, and they're trying to change yours. If you're being sold something, you don't just take at face value what you're being told. You realise you're being sold something. It may or may not help you, So you see through the guff. You see everything that occurs, everything in reality for what it really is, more and more. And this is tied in with your own ego dissolution and things like that. So that's been how your consciousness ascends during and after a spiritual awakening. Now, many people talk to me about these things, and so through experience of talking to clients and through messages online, I hear all these different things that people experience, and I've had my own experiences too. So, as always, know that you're not alone in this. You're not strange or weird or crazy. The symptoms that people have and the resulting experiences people have, I see a lot of commonalities, a lot of patterns in many people, so know that you're not alone. Okay. So don't forget to click subscribe if you're not already a subscriber, and hit that bell button too to get notifications to receive regular spiritual inspiration on your journey through life. Like and share also, because we're raising the mass vibration together. So go now in love and peace.